Alright, so as with most audiophiles, I really enjoy the sound of a good tube amplifier. But historically speaking, tube amps have never really been mainstream. They've always been built by audiophiles for audiophiles, which means there's only a limited amount of things that you can connect to a tube amp. And today, people want features. They want options. They want to be able to stream music from their phone to the amp, and they want all these different things built in. They don't want to buy all these additional accessories. So in light of that, it's with great relief and pleasure that I introduce to you all the iFi Retro 50 integrated amplifier. Let's talk about it. Alright guys, so here it is, the appropriately named Retro 50 integrated amplifier. Now because there's so many features to go over, what I'm going to do is I'm going to breeze through them all just to make this video more short and palatable. So to begin, let's talk about how well built this unit is. You know, aesthetics is really in the eye of the beholder. I think it looks great, but more importantly, it's built very well. The bamboo case is very nice. I think it looks great and it's very sturdy. And I like the fact that the bulk of the amplifier is actually made out of metal, and the volume control, man, that knob feels great. There's a lot of really good resistance there. It just feels very quality. And then we have, of course, the input selector, which is nice, and then the tone controls right here also feel very nice to the touch and very pleasant to use. So overall, it just gives a good impression. It gives you the feeling like this unit is built to last a very long time. I think the only complaint some people will have is the logo right here. Personally, I don't mind unicorns, and I think that's supposed to be a Chiba, whatever. But some people might think it's tacky. Otherwise, I think it's a really good looking unit. So now let's take a look at inside of the Retro 50 and see what we get for our money. All right, now that we have the Retro 50 en natural, let's take a look at what we get. And on the inside, we can see this beautiful circuit. Man, I really love how simple and how well laid out this circuit is. It's just gorgeous to look at. I like the fact that they use high quality wire on the inside. Here we have a nice volume potentiometer. But what I really want to talk about are the tubes. Now, atop we're going to see 4 power tubes, and on the bottom we're going to see 2 smaller signal tubes. First, let's talk about the power tubes. And the power tubes are going to essentially be a variant of the EL84 tube variety. Now, the story goes, iFi basically found a whole bunch of new old stock EL84X tubes. Now, if you're wondering, well, what the hell is an EL84X tube? Well, according to iFi, it's essentially a variant of an EL84 tube that's better in every single way, which is why they decided to go with this tube for the Retro 50. Now, the cool thing is this is backwards compatible with an EL84 tube. Now, each of these tubes are rated at about 1,000 hours of life, which means at some point you are going to need to replace them. So the good news is when that time comes, you have 2 basic options. You can either go to iFi or your distributor and get some new tubes directly from them, or you can just find your regular EL84 tubes of choice and throw them into the tube amp. Now, it's important to note that this is a self-biasing circuit, which is pretty cool. What that basically means is it's plug and play. Just put your new tubes in and away you go. You don't have to worry about going in and biasing each volume pot, so that's pretty cool. And on the signal tube side of things, we have 2 EFC82s. Now, these tubes are going to last a very long time. It may be 3 or more years until you even have to think about replacing those. So that's pretty cool. Overall, this is just a very simple, very intelligent circuit. And now let's talk about the features that you get with the Retro 50. All right, guys, so now that we know what's going on under the hood, let's talk about the features. In fact, before we even do that, let's begin by talking about this. If you want to change out the tubes in the iFi Retro 50, it's really simple. All you got to do is unscrew these feet and then the bamboo case will slide right on off. So pretty simple stuff. Now, talk about the features. Let's begin by starting on the back. Now, as some of you may already know, iFi built a reputation on building these high-performance compact devices like headphone amplifiers, phono preamplifiers, things of that sort. And essentially, the iFi Retro has 3 of these products built inside, starting with the phono stage. Now, I'm not going to go over specifications just because we're short on time. All you need to know, it is an award-winning phono stage, has 72 dB gain, and it's just absolutely fantastic. We also have the micro iDAC, and I actually plugged this into my computer. I run a Mac. I had absolutely no issues with drivers recognizing the DAC inside. And the funny thing is, it actually sounds better than my original iMicro DAC, which uses an ESS Sabre chipset. The current chipset is Burr Brown. I think it sounds much more natural. It's just much easier to listen to than the original iDAC. So yeah, the DAC inside here is absolutely fantastic. And then we get, I guess I will have to turn this around, a wonderful, wonderful headphone amplifier. In fact, they just released the iCan SE, and I'll go on record as saying this is as good, if not better, than the brand new iCan SE. This has a lot more power at 7 watts. You have 2 plugs here. One is for IEMs, and one is going to be for regular headphones. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful sounding headphone section. Oops, hit the camera there, and I'm keeping it on because this is 0 fidelity. Who cares? So anyways, as you can see here, we also have a coaxial input, which could also serve as an optical input. We have a little adapter that comes with the amp. We have 2 regular analog inputs, and by and large, this has most of your bases covered. We have a little spot here to plug your antenna in because you can stream music via your phone to this because it is Bluetooth compatible. It's actually NFC as well. So overall, it has most features that you could want. The only thing that I wish it had was a variable output. It'd be nice to be able to plug a subwoofer into this via typical RCAs. But beyond that, you know what? There's not a whole lot left to be desired. So let's turn this around again. And let's look at the faceplate here. So here's going to be where we select our inputs. This is going to be where we control the volume. This is going to be tone controls. And I'm so happy to see this. I know audiophiles like to shun tone controls, but at this price point and for a unit like this, man, I love it. So I don't know the exact specifications, but I think the treble is attenuated at 10K, and I think the bass is at around 100. I know there's 8 dB of gain in total. So yeah, this is a very welcome thing. It allows you to customize the sound more to your taste. Now we also have different features here. This is going to be basically allow us to select between DXD, DSD, and just normal PCM listening. Right here we have, of course, a digital input selector, and here we have 3D holographic and X-bass features. Now what this really means is if you like a big wide soundstage, you just click this up. You have 3 different ticks, which basically influences how wide you want your soundstage to be. I prefer things all the way off, just in natural mode, but some people might like a little wider soundstage. And then we have X-bass, which is just Mo bass. So if you want just a little bit more, you take it up a notch. Then if you want a whole bunch, take it all the way up. So between that and the tone controls, man, you can really dial in a lot of different systems. Overall, that's it, guys. There's going to be some accessories that come with it, so let's go over those real quick before we talk about how this sounds. All right, so last but not least, I want to talk about how much stuff you get with the Retro 50, because I really want to make sure that this is a plug-and-play experience. So you get a pair of RCA cables, you get a 1/8 to 1/8 cable, you get this adapter, so if you have an optical connection, then you can use that into your Retro 50. You get a USB cable, you get a little remote that's very simple, just controls the volume, and then you get these really well-built speaker cables, which, if I remember correctly, are silver-coated copper. So overall, that's really cool. So now let's talk about how the Retro 50 sounds. Alright guys, so before I launch into the review, there are a couple things that you all need to know. First and foremost, this is going to be a slightly incomplete review because I wasn't able to evaluate the phono section during the reviewing process. Now, the good news is that I have heard the iPhono on a very expensive system, and to be honest, it sounded great. But for the sake of argument, I need to mention that I wasn't able to evaluate the phono section in the Retro 50, even though it should be the same thing. Moving on, there are a lot of elements to the Retro 50, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down into sections. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the Retro 50's general character and how it sounds on traditional loudspeakers. So, let's get right to it. Alright, so the bottom line is no matter what you connect to the Retro 50, you can pretty much expect to encounter a slightly laid back and definitively warm sound. In fact, if I had to describe the Retro 50 in just one word, it would be fun. I mean, this amplifier is a whole bunch of fun to listen to. In fact, what I like the most about it is when I have this connected to, well, just about any speaker, I find myself listening more to the music than trying to decipher all these different audiophile things. And I think there's a pretty big market for something like that. Now, breaking things down into specifics, let's first talk about the treble. Now, the treble I really like because it's not rolled off, nor is it bumped up on top. I think it's a very fine balance that they've struck, especially for something like this. Now, personally, I do think the top end can get just a little bit rough, but hey, that's easy to solve. All I got to do is use the tone control, turn it down just a little bit, and I'm pretty happy. And your taste may vary, so that's the beauty of tone controls, is you can customize it to your taste. Now, going to the mid-range, well, that's definitely the most salient attribute of this amplifier. It has that typical lush, organic, warm-sounding, just very engaging mid-range that really puts a lot of meat on the bone. So it makes your music sound full, and I just love it. And the best part is, it's not overly done. It's not overly saturated, so your music doesn't sound syrupy, if that's even an appropriate word to use. Instead, it just sounds full and very pleasant. Now, the bass is going to be surprisingly powerful, and I say surprising because, let's face it, this is a small amplifier. It doesn't have the biggest transformers, but the bass output is very strong. It does have a slightly warm character to it, but you don't have to worry about bass out of this thing. It has quite a bit of it. Now, obviously, this is a lowish powered amplifier. It only puts out 25 watts into 8 ohms. Now, obviously, you're not going to get the biggest dynamic swings out of it. It's not going to be a powerhouse, so unless you have like very efficient Klipsch speakers, no, you're not going to be able to rock Led Zeppelin at like 100 dBs. But I will say it's powerful enough to drive most speakers well. I personally prefer the sound of the Retro 50 with more open-sounding products like Totem, Dolly, Klipsch, and products of that sort. Now, overall though, I would say that this is a finely balanced integrated amplifier that I think a lot of people will enjoy. So now let's talk about how it sounds on headphones. Alright, so here's the crazy thing. Even though I'm not a big fan of headphones, one of the highlights of the Retro 50 for me is this headphone section, and that's because it's awesome. So not only does it output enough power to drive most headphones very well, but it has this ballsy sound, it has this very warm, lush sound to it that just makes for a very fun and engaging listen. In fact, one of the limitations that it will have with speakers in terms of dynamics doesn't really come to play here in the headphone section, so you get this wonderfully dynamic sound as well. And overall, it amounts to something that sounds great with a wide variety of headphones. I know I tried it with a bunch of Odyssey headphones. I've tried it with, of course, Hi-Fi Man to include their 1000 flagships. I've tried the AudioQuest headphones, and it sounded good with everything. So I think iFi did a great job with the headphone section. One could even argue that you don't even need speakers with the Retro 50 to enjoy it. Just plug in a good set of headphones, plug in your turntable or your computer or whatever, and you get great sound. So that leads me to my final thoughts. So if it isn't obvious enough already, there is a lot to celebrate about the Retro 50. But before I do, let me first get the obvious out of the way. This is not going to be a purist piece. And I say that just because I know there's going to be people who watch this video and they're going to ask me, well, Sean, how does the Retro 50 compare to a Dane's Minuetto and? Well, here's the thing. If you were to compare a full-featured product like this to something that only has 1 or 2 inputs that's designed strictly for sound quality, odds are that purist piece is going to sound overall better than this. That's not the point of the Retro 50. The Retro 50's point is to sound really good, but to also give you all these modern-day solutions in one tiny, good-looking box. And this is where I think iFi just knocked it out the park. To my knowledge, they're the first manufacturer to really fuse old tech with new tech in this kind of a way. And I think what they ended up with is a product that is going to have a wide appeal to a lot of individuals. So if you're somebody who wants a secondary system, this is a perfect foundation for a secondary system. If you're somebody who's a headphone enthusiast, you know what, forget about the speaker outputs, use all of the features and use this wonderful headphone section and there you go. Or if you're somebody who's just tired of the hi-fi merry-go-round and you want one simple, elegant solution that's going to sound good and sound musical, then you know what, this is a great piece to step into. So overall, I think iFi just knocked it out the park. This is something that's definitely worth celebrating. I think it's a great accomplishment, and at $1,500, you know what? I gotta say, it's a pretty darn good value. So that's just my take on the Retro 50. Guys, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.